Freaking out, man. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
What do all men with power want? More power.
My name is Luca Zanna. I was an Italian by birth, and I became an American by choice. Our lives and freedoms are in danger. This is not a drill. If you're listening to this broadcasting, you are the resistance.
All systems go.
Welcome to Love, Guns and Freedom. Here we go, guys and girls. Another Sunday, another show. You're listening to Love, Guns and Freedom with Luca Zanna on K-Talks 1340 AM and also on 104.1 FM. Don't forget, if you want to listen to the show on the internet, you can go to www.lovegunsfreedom.com. Alright, it's kind of hot. Yes, it is. We are here in the southwest. Average day, it's about 110 degrees. The beautiful thing, though, that it's dry. I love it. Honestly, people say, are you crazy? 110, 115? You know what? I never even really sweat. I mean, yes, you lose salts and all this stuff, but it's handleable. If you're a little used to it, it's beautiful. Of course, don't go under the sun at 12 o'clock, high noon. You're going to cook like a boiled eggs. But beside that, it's beautiful, and I'm enjoying the summer. Now, when it's hot like this, before we go into the show, I need some energy, and I need some to stay cool. So I used to like also espresso. Even when it's summer, I drink it hot. But once in a while, I did a little variation. I would like to share with you. First of all, you need to get Zanna coffee. You know that. That's the way you support the show. www.zannacoffee.com. You pick the blend you like. My favorite is a straight shot espresso. Then, of course, what do? You make your own coffee the way you like it. And then you make it in the little ice cubes. And you put it in the freezer. Guess what? Whenever you're thirsty and you want a little bit of, caffeine and feel a little hot, guess what? Get a little cube of iced coffee and put it in your little cup and let it sit for a few minutes, and it's going to be really nice and cold and super freeze. I love it. This is just the way I like to drink Zanna coffee. Now, let's go talking about serious stuff, not because Zanna coffee is not serious. In this show, I bring you always information and guests that normally you will never probably find in a real commercial station. But we are a commercial station. Why we are doing this? First of all, because I want to thank K-Talks that let me talk about these topics. I think in the area we are pretty much the only one. We can talk about these things. And I'm really thankful. And of course, I would talk this about anyway, even just through the internet, but let's not forget, this information, it is not just some sort of entertainment. These are real facts that I always invite you to verify. Now, the guest I will bring right now, it's from Rome, Italy. I had him already on my show a few times, at least a couple times. Great feedback, by the way, from the listeners, because the information is very unique. This man is not just a regular guy that works at the bank. And don't get me wrong, nothing wrong if you work 9 to 5 at the job, but this guy is being, let's put it this way, chosen through his lineage, his family, and also through, the way he was able to go through into a club, let's put it this way, that is not exactly the general golf club, something that you can, join like that. Let's put it this way, it's the Illuminati Club. And he wrote several books. He's a book author, and he's trying to warn us about what's going on behind the scenes of the, let's say, global elite, what they're really doing. So I would like to say, let me just bring him on. His name is Leo Zagami from Rome, Italy. Leo, are you there?
Yes, I am, and thank you for having me back on, Gianluca.
Thank you very much, Leo. I always enjoy the information because you say things that, unfortunately, I wish you were wrong. I wish you were just, a little cuckoo. But unfortunately, what the things you say in your books, that when I go out to verify and double check, they're real. And freaks me out a little bit because I tell you, sometimes I wish you were just writing a bunch of novels. That would be great, entertaining. But the things you're saying are real. And sometimes your let's say your ratio is way too high to be real and freaks me out a little bit. But the good thing about this, it gives us the opportunity to learn, to have an understanding who is our enemy and to try to learn how to defeat it. Now, before we go ahead, I would like you to introduce yourself briefly. who you are. You, as I said, you're not just a regular guy writing books. You're also part of a special elite group that, is not easy to get in. You cannot just join in like you joined the golf club. So tell us a little bit about you, please, Leo.
Yeah, well, in synthesis, I would say that from a family experience, family background, came this privilege membership within certain elite circles, and also in esoteric magical orders that we commonly refer to as the Illuminati, which I have then described in my books. I actually started my mission as a necessity to stay alive in 2006. I soon understood, though, by staying on the internet in the alternative media for 2 years, between 2006 and 2008, that there wasn't really that much freedom, because there was so much disinformation, so much manipulation of the content of what you were trying to portray, explain. How can I say? I was really having a difficulty in keeping my message clear down to the point, because it was always interfered by people with their own agenda. So then I decided to write books, which was a new experience for me. I started in Japan. And then I published, after publishing a few books in Japan, I started in Italy. I published 8 books in Italy, and then I managed to gain a contract, reach this dream come true of finally publishing in the US with, let's say, a big independent publisher and a big independent distribution, especially because IPG distribution in Chicago is the second in the country. So with them, I am finally able to reach all the readers who are interested. But you'll be astonished, Gianluca. Unfortunately, still a minority reads the written paper nowadays, because the majority of people seem to have a very short span of attention, and after the first or second page on the internet, they switch off their brains. So to actually gain the attention of the majority of people, I should write a novel. Maybe I would gain more attention.
Leo, I have this reality. At this age, right now, we are in an age that, differently from the Middle Ages, where only the nobility were able to afford to buy books, okay, and to be educated. In this age that we're living now, to be ignorant is a choice. It is not more like something, oh my God, I am poor, I cannot afford books. So it's free. You can buy books for free now. I mean, I know it's a weird way to say. At the point, you can get information for free. I know some of your Kindles, you can also get them for free. I mean, the point is, it's not about, it's about people really refusing, or maybe even just already being too stupid, and I'm not trying to put them down, to be dumbed down, to even be able to understand what's going on. Because that's the plan. They try to dumb down humanity. That's the reality. So I don't know, but meanwhile we're here, and that's the purpose of the show. I'm trying to, let's say, show to the rest of humanity, at least to the listeners, that there is something going on, and it's more than just football or soccer or whatever that you show on TV.
That's in fact a great job you're doing, and thumbs up for that. Because there is people like you who are trying to get the message through to an audience which is not very receptive. But I would say that maybe in the US you're more lucky than here in Europe, Gianluca.
Well,
you know the situation here in Italy from close hand. So
you're
you
right.
know how bad it is here.
You're right. Not only better off, but you know that the way things you say in Europe, you could be persecuted politically, also criminally and civilly. I mean, let's say you say something about the Pope, okay? That is your opinion, and also based on fact. You could be sued and also pay a fine for vilipend your religion, whatever they call it, okay? Let's say you say something like Brigitte Bardot did about the Muslim invasion of Europe, okay? A very innocent letter to the editor a few years ago. They don't have First Amendment in France, and so much that Brigitte Bardot, she was forced to pay 14,000 euro, like almost $15,000 or $16,000 just as a fine, because they were found it was a hate speech, even there was no hate at all. So that's the reality. We are better off here. That's why we hope this communication can be heard also to through our friends in Europe, Sweden, Germany, everywhere. Now let's talk about first of all your work. You have a new
Yes.
project, okay, that I'm here in front of me, and I'm ordering right now because I like to support an independent author like yourself. I mean, this is not just about the dollar that you get. I think every job must be, my opinion, when it's well done, paid. I like to write stuff too, and
Thank you, Luca. That's very kind of you. I think you are one of the few people who thinks this way, and that's why I respect you very much. You are doing an excellent job in supporting my work, because we are getting really very little money out of it, because you can imagine the cost of this whole procedure of translating and putting it together and then having it out with a major distribution, which takes the majority in the end of the money you make with a book. So the author is always left really counting peanuts, but that's better than nothing, because I think that in a way, still, the fact that you bring it out on hard paper, on a book, this information makes it more safe for me then, because you see, it's increasingly difficult to keep privacy over the internet. And also, people feel at times threatened by having certain information on the desktops and so on. So the fact that they can just have a book that they can bring anywhere and it's private, it's quite something these days that is picking back. They thought that digital books like Kindles and so on will be the majority of the reading by now. But instead, there's still a minimum part, because the freedom of the book is still a great thing.
No, I agree. By the way, I love the idea of books for many reasons. One of the things, first of all, it's mine. I can hold it in my hands. As much as I understand the concept of ebooks, you can reach probably more people faster. But the idea of paper, I can bring it with me in the bathroom while I'm in my bathtub and read a book in every place I want. And more important, something stays with me forever, because the internet may go down, they may shut it down, they may delete titles. Remember, they can censor everything on the internet. Once you have
what worries me more is the increased usage of cloud, of various clouds that are not really anything else than service that can be in the hands of the enemy, and by that, in that way, control your life, can erase your life in any moment. It's very dangerous. So I always advise people to make their own backups on hard disk, because it's a much safer option.
Yes, it's true. I don't know, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I like my library. I saw you have a beautiful library too, and I like to even just watch the books. I like sitting down.
Books and hard documents are even better. When you have an archive on paper of material that you can bring back up, and it really describes this whole world. I'm very happy of having my archives, my books, and I will not give them for anything in the world. The same thing is also with my records. I'm very attached to this whole concept of archiving, which I think in a way, even if it's done probably for some in a primitive way, is still safer, and it's also closer to the mind of a person, because when you put a light in front of your eyes and you're reading a Kindle or you're reading something on a computer, you have a light in front of your eyes, remember. You don't have a piece of paper which, it's a reflection of the light you project on it, but you can even read it under the sun anywhere. You don't have an artificial light. There you always have an artificial light. So
yes.
I think that your eyes need to rest, and sometimes reading maybe becomes a stressful experience in the digital format. But it's an option that we still like to have, that of course every writer has these days, doing e-publishing in various directions, so we do it. But as I said, we still old-fashioned, and we prefer that. And in case the Soak civilization goes to shambles and it completely disappears, we know that of course a lot of information will be lost if it's all left in the virtual format.
Yes. Now let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the contents of this book, Confessions of an Illuminati in Volume 3.
Confessions takes it from here, from this idea of wanting to bury a seed, that will grow up in the decades and centuries to come. The idea of a trilogy where for the first time we go really deep into the esoteric, into the manipulation game, into the psychological game, into the sectarian and religious game of this new world order, of these Illuminati. Who are the Illuminati? We started, as you know, talking with the volume 1 on this trilogy, which described a little bit how the whole Illuminati network is made up, and how I interpret also the word Illuminati, because of course, you know, if you have to be traditional, the order of Adam Weishaupt only had a limited time span. So, I mean, Illuminati is a much wider concept that was unprecedented, and of course was born a long time before Adam Weishaupt, and comes from ancient Atlantis through Egypt, and then into our civilization here in the West or in the East. I mean, it's incredible the amount of information that we have gathered and that I have managed to work on for many years to put together this trilogy that finally is coming out in the English format. And now the third chapter of it describes in fact, the subtitle should give you an idea a little bit about what it's about. I mean, Espionage, Templars and Satanism in the Shadows of the Vatican is very prominent also here in volume 3, the role of the Vatican in all this. We have the first chapter dedicated to the knighthoods, specifically going through the various traditions of the various knighthoods, their links with Freemasonry, and then we go into the Holy Grail. I finally explain what is this Holy Grail.
Okay, let's start 1 second, one thing at a time. First of all, I have a question. Something probably I forgot to ask you my other 2 interviews. You don't, you know, regular people that, you know, they don't come from families with connection, at least bloodlines. You can just say, I want to become one of the Illuminati. It doesn't happen like that, okay? You were born into a family. Tell us a little bit about your background, because I know that's important to understand. Even that, you know, people sometimes listening to the show say, okay, who is this guy? I mean, is making things up. I mean, this is not just like, you know, tomorrow I want to say Luca Zanna now wants to become a grandmaster of some secret organization. It doesn't happen like that. Who is Leo Zagami? What is your background? And how does somebody really can become part of this organization?
Well, in my case, it's actually these organizations that want me inside this organization, because I am from certain bloodlines that guaranteed to these various organizations that are linked to Freemasonry, the Knights Templars, and all the Western esoteric initiatic tradition, guaranteed them, let's say, not only a credibility, but a continuation in transmitting them the genuine tradition. For that reason, I haven't really come out of the the lower parts of the pyramid, as you know, but from much higher in this pyramid and chain of power, and I have come out for a necessity when I fought against the injustices, but then I saw it was impossible to sort it out from within without really bringing out in the outside world these truths. And my experience comes from, of course, being the son of a young psychiatrist, psychanalyst, very known in Italy for having been the first to experiment with Jung psychiatry, with Carlo Tenuto, and then in Switzerland with Carl Gustav Jung, which was called Meyer. And I also talk about this, in fact, in volume 3 of my Confessions, the link with the Illuminati and Carl Gustav Jung, and also the links with sacred magic and mind control. But there is not only this element, there is also the political element that comes from the fact that my grandfather was a senator. He was married with an aristocrat from Sicily, from a very ancient bloodline, the Marchesi de Gregorio, barons of the Sacred Roman Empire, princes of Santeria. And then, of course, I have my mother's side, which is linked to the family of the Queen Mother, the Lion family, the Earl of Strathmore and Scotland. So this is really having it just synthesized, because then it's much more complex and much wider. And in fact, 3 books of over 300 pages each have described, or have attempted to describe, my links with this underworld of the Illuminati and how they operate. The Illuminati also operate in various types of groups. It can be the Knighthood, it can be the Masonic Lodge, it can be the Illuminati Illuminist Order, literature of various kinds. And I have tried to explain in my books this whole network. Now, we arrive to volume 3, and of course, this description continues. And I go in some other parts, also my personal link with but of course it's a mix between a bio, an essay, and it wants to be also a manual that people will be able to gain information that they can then maybe go and research further themselves. Because I always, as you have noticed from the previous writings of mine, dear Zanna, I am very meticulous in giving citations, sources that are credible, that one can research, confront, and for this reason you can have also a look and see that it's not a book of superficiality here. It's a very complex kind of book, and the whole trilogy is very complex. So
let me tell you something. I agree, because every time I read your books, I always find reference. You don't just start to say, okay, let's start to say this, and this. Also, because you could be sued very easily, especially in Europe. If you say something that is not true, oh my gosh, you could go to jail.
The laws here are much more strict than in America, and for this reason, I tend to be very meticulous about the citations and the way the citations are made and the documents in my hands.
Now let's go to the point of this book, Confessions of the Illuminati, of an Illuminati, Volume 3. The subtitle says Espionage, Templars and Satanism in the Shadows of the Vatican. I mean, just saying these things. In Italy, if you don't have all the things to corroborate, you know what happened. If you go and say something bad about the Pope in Italy, they can come and pretty much give you a citation, and they may also arrest you if you don't pay the citation. Vilipend your religion. At least the last time I remember when I was in Italy years ago. So, without giving too much.
But my book has none of all that. It came out, it sold more than, I think, around 3,000 copies in the Italian edition. And it was pretty heavy, of course, on the Vatican and everything else. Some say it even led to the resignation of Ratzinger. I must say that this American edition, of course, has been updated and has even more material that probably would have been more difficult for me to publish here in Italy. But of course, I am now bringing everything out gradually, also here in Italy. But I never had any problems legally. Only once, in Volume 1, I had this grandmaster who brought me to court because he thinks that I have led his credibility, while instead he comes from an irregular lodge in Calabria. He is basically known to be completely out of his mind. In fact, the Italian courts have actually sanctioned that he wasn't even suitable for working in his own job because he used to be a guardia carceraria. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was the only lawsuit I received. And it kind of, when we went there with my lawyer, it seemed like they had set up the whole thing. But then because of the fact that my lawyer is quite clever, and he noticed that the first edition was not published in the place where they actually brought us, which was Perugia, but it was published in Milan. And you see, there were 4 different editions of Volume 1, because it was a highly successful book. I sold 5,000 copies of that book.
Yeah. So
in Italy,
the point is, this is exactly the point.
But in the end, you see, they had to move the whole court case, and I think that if you can imagine all the names I made in my books published in Italy, in 8 books published in Italy, almost every possible name, and I've never been sued because of the fact that the information is, of course, accurate.
Leo, exactly.
It has to be accurate.
Let me ask you one thing. I understand that's very important. I'm glad that you did always everything to try to also be sure that you bring facts and not just slander or opinions.
Absolutely.
But my point is, did you ever had, let's say, any special personal contact, like, hey, you, out there, you bring in my name, hey, you, watch what you're doing? I mean, the Vatican, did he, or indirectly, I don't think the Pope is going to call you directly, but did you have any type of strange type of forces or communications try to warn you to stop doing what you've been doing?
Sure. Even before we published in Italy this trilogy, the Vatican sent me, and this actually is described in part in Volume 3, though maybe I should have made it even clearer, but this character is described in Volume 3 and is called Antonio Leonardo Montuoro, which works for the Vatican Secret Services, and he's a representative also of some kind of police association also. And this guy, who is a kind of trade union between the Italian intelligence and the Vatican intelligence, and works with the Bishop of Palestrina, Sigalini, which is very high up in Azione Cattolica, which, as you know, is a very influential Italian religious group within the Catholic Church. And so basically this guy out of the blue literally called me one day. I still remember, it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. My wife was in the shower. I was I think on Facebook or something, reading something. And suddenly I received this call, and this guy is like, I'm from the Vatican intelligence and we would like to meet you for lunch. So
Lunch?
Yes.
What did you eat?
Well, no, I invited him. We were in my area. We were in, I went a little bit further in my area to meet him. I went in Carsoli, which is in Abruzzo, and we just had a very simple meal there and just a chat. Yeah. Then the guy said, okay, you have to come next week to Rome. And in Rome, I was brought to a guy who used to be known as the general for John Paul II, Prefetto Marinelli. Mm-hmm. And this guy is very high up, very powerful still. He's still alive. He was one of the last people that talked to John Paul II before he died. And this guy apparently was there waiting for me in the sacristy of this church.
Yeah.
Where they were doing this mass for this group of the Sanniti, which basically is those people who live in the Sannio area, Avellino, Benevento.
Yes.
Very influential in the old days of the Democrazia Cristiana. Mm-hmm. So basically, I found myself with all these intelligence operatives from the Vatican, and they were nice to me, blah, blah, blah. They didn't come yet to the point, but they started to talk to me. He said, maybe, and we know that you are about to bring out a book. Let's talk about it for lunch, like after a day or two. I went for lunch, and there was this guy with the secretary, and he offered me basically even a bank account that I could have at my disposal with money coming in from people from the Vatican, making me in charge of one of their knighthoods.
Wow.
If I just quitted publishing the books that already came out in Japan.
Wow. So they were reading you. They've been following you. So they already knew about your book in Japan. That's pretty amazing. I mean,
that was pretty amazing. Yes, I mean, later on we kind of collaborated for bringing Princess Kaoru and trying to see if there was a point of contact. I didn't let them believe that I let them believe that I was actually giving up on the books at that point. Instead, meanwhile, I was actually preparing for having the whole trilogy read instead than only one volume.
Yeah.
And I was posticipating the beginning of all this to February, March of 2012. And the whole thing, my relationship, with them lasted until, let's say, January, February. Then at that point, I just gave up on them because they realized that I was putting into print the book.
Yeah, so you didn't want to play the game. That's pretty honorable of you, I tell you, because I don't know exactly how much money were in that account, but many people would say, let's talk about it. After all, you don't even need to write books anymore. You're gonna get paid. I mean,
well, and I will get paid to do a job that I do for free most of the time, which is to be Grand Master of Knighthoods. I do it all the time because I am in charge of my Masonic knighthood thing. But I mean, we don't really get paid for it. The Vatican instead gets paid because they really due people in large sums of money to be a member of their Knights Templar, of their various knighthoods. The recognized ones are only the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre and the Knights of Malta, but they also have some more secretive ones like Knights Templar, which was in this case the Knights of the Holy Spirit, of the Temple of the Holy Spirit, which is a knighthood that they have inaugurated at the headquarters of the Azione Cattolica in Rome, with the members also of the Stuart family. which I talk about extensively in my book, Volume 3. This is everything I'm telling you here. Actually, it's in Volume 3, because I wanted to make people participants of what was going on, and I think that by giving them this conspiracy reality, this insight into my world, on the risk that I'm taking, the work that I'm doing, in a way, I will gain not only the respect, but also the possibility of living longer, because it's becoming for the Vatican increasingly difficult to eliminate me, and many times they have instead tried to corrupt me.
Yeah, no, this is true. Sometimes, at this point, when you want to go out, you go all the way or you don't go. Because if now at this point, if something happens to you, they will probably much convalidate all the things you've been saying even more. And they know it. So the best way probably now is just to try to ignore you, hopefully. But still, what you're doing is not exactly a Boy Scout game. Because it's
well, they manage in Italy to be able to censor me pretty much most of the time without then. You see, the moment in which they realized that the trilogy was so powerful, they influenced in a way the publisher, and in the end they stopped publishing it. So basically, I mean, I had to change publisher. I then did Volume 1 Remix, which is a new version of it here in Italy, but the trilogy is basically out of production, and it's not even available any longer. I mean, the last copies have been sold out.
Wow.
And it has sold on the whole something like over 10,000 copies, this trilogy. That for Italy, it's an enormous number of books. We're talking actually about 12,000 copies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about an enormous amount of books for Italy. And I don't think that I will be able to get in the bookshops again like before, because unfortunately now the censorship is getting my books out of the bookshops.
Yeah, no, this is true. I mean, for Italy, it's a small market, especially. Let's not forget this topic. It is not exactly like boobs and let's say pop culture, and these are really interesting topics that not many people even want to even try to read or learn. So this is pretty amazing. Now, yes, the fact that these books, they probably will become collectible in Italy. For example, I know something similar happened to another author here in America. It was about the book The Silent Invasion that was written about in 2003. The book, I used to pay $13 for the book. Now it's worth they won like $1,000 on Amazon or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised. That's why I say, if you can, people buy books, especially controversial books like Confessions of an Illuminati by Leo Zagami, because you never know. This book today is available for a few dollars. Maybe in 2-3 years from now, maybe no more reprinted. It could be worth maybe $1,000 or even more. You never know. So listen, I want to ask you another question here. When you talk about Satanism in the shadows of the Vatican, without giving away too much, but tell us a little bit.
First of all, we have to say thank you to the American publisher who has made available for the US this book without any censorship, able to reach even Barnes and Noble and a wide spectrum of readers that might finally encounter the right information. So I'm very glad of that.
Yeah, tell us exactly when you say, as I said, this Satanism in the shadows of the Vatican. What type of evidence, what exactly means Satanism in the shadows of the Vatican? What they're doing? Tell us a little more.
Tell us a little bit more. I think that people have always imagined, that maybe there is something really dark going on in the Vatican, but they are not really able to pinpoint the characters or even have a remote idea of it. Now, in this book, I try to really show you the hidden heroes who have even fought this war against it, like Don Luigi Villa, who was the agent of Padre Pio against Freemasonry in the Vatican and the corruption of the Satanic Creed in the Vatican. Then I also talk about Padre Amort. Father Amort was the greatest exorcist of the Vatican, the guy who actually teaches the exorcisms, who warned against Satanism in the Vatican. But then I also go inside the great testimony of what has happened with the unfortunate death of Emanuele Orlandi, and the testimony of his brother, who is a dear friend, Pietro Orlandi, and then the links with Satanism of people like Corrado Balducci, who was involved with ufology, the link between ufology and Satanism, but also the ancient sectarian traditions that in the Vatican are not known outside of the Vatican, but in the Vatican have seen for many centuries sects of basically small groups of pedophiles that have constituted secret orders to practice their pedophilia and to actually embrace it fully with rituals that always go into what is known to the outside world as Satanism, because this is Satanism. The way the most sick things happen when a priest that is supposed to give you, the word of Jesus is actually working for the devil. I know this might seem crazy for some people, but actually in this book I show the reality of it, the testimony of people very high up, like Alessandro Devanni, who was a former Italian secret agent of SISMI and collaborator of the Central Intelligence Agency. What happened with this Gabriela Carlizzi, with Aldo Conchione, the publisher on a book on the death of Simonetta Cesaroni, which you remember very well. Probably in Italy was a big case, murder, very mysterious murder.
Yeah.
And like the disappearance of Emanuele Orlandi, which was never found again. So
let's remind 1 second to the American listeners, Emanuele Orlandi, maybe just a name, but in Italy, who grew up, I remember was a young man at the time, was still in school. That's an interesting story. Tell us briefly about Emanuele Orlandi's story. This woman, this young lady, wasn't a woman, was a young girl, disappeared, and nobody ever found her. But there is something darker than that. Tell us a little bit more about that. You remember the story?
The interesting things that have happened connected to Emanuele Orlandi are many. Now, actually, in the last few days, if you go in the Italian media, there is some new revelations that the Vatican might have a secret dossier on Emanuele Orlandi.
Wow.
And this is only one of the last things that have sprung out of a case that started, at the beginning of the 80s, when this 13-year-old, this 15, 30, now I don't remember very well, Emanuele Orlandi was basically a girl, but her particularity was that she was a member of the Vatican state,
yes.
Meaning that she disappeared on 22nd of June 1983. I was myself 13 years old. You probably were also very young. We grown up with this mystery of Emanuele Orlandi that was never found again. And for many years, these stories that involved the Vatican Bank, the Banda della Maiana, the secret services of various countries, and then there was a link with the disappearance of another girl, which was Mirella Gregori, who disappeared basically already on the 7th of May 1983 and never was found. She was 15 at the time.
Yes.
Now I have just. 15 at the time, and basically what happened was this: she was coming out of her school of music. She was studying music. She said to have had a very big musical talent, so she went to this music school belonging to the Vatican in Santa Apollinare in Rome, which is close to Palazzo Madama. And then, from what the brother told me, because you can go on YouTube, I interviewed Pietro Orlandi at least 2 times.
Wow.
And Pietro tells me that at one point there was something to do with some job offer that she had received outside of the school from somebody who wanted to promote some perfumes or something like that. Okay?
Yeah.
This might have been, though, the same people who then kidnapped her. she called the home and said, that she had this job. Maybe they will let her give her, like give out flyers for this company or whatever. And then she never came home. She never was seen again. There was somebody who said that she was thrown into a car. Other people said other things, but there wasn't really any certainty. It's like she disappeared out of thin air. Nothing was ever kind of proven.
Yeah. Can you tell me again the date? Can you say again the date when she disappeared? It was a date. June. Which day? June the 20th. Or June?
The 22nd of June, 1983.
You know better than me. There are some dates that are very important to some of these people, for sacrifices, for rituals. Anything's going on the 22nd,
well, of course,
the 23rd?
You're talking about the day after the solstice in a way, no? Or the day, or the period which is around also all that period is considered very magical, between the 10th to the 24th of June or something. It's kind of very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes I see some of these situations when they need this sort of, let's say, praise, like the lamb, like almost un agnello, for the sacrifices. They're always around specific dates that they're important in the calendar, because if you worship the devil, you must follow also this sort of dates and rituals. Now, pedophile is a fact. People may not believe in the devil, that's another story, but they believe it. More important, we know that there are facts and evidence that the Vatican is been covering up, and we've been exposing them through lawsuit, and even the Pope and the Church is being forgiving priests. They've been admitting, confessing to be, let's say, raping children and also having AIDS. This is so sick, beyond sick. So the point is, we know very well that the Church, the Vatican, is being covering up about the pedophile. That is not something happened just the last 10 years. It's something long time. Now, the next step is why they do this. Are they just sick bastards, or there is also something like deeper and darker, like they use the children for also something more sinister, like, for example, these devil rituals. Is there any human sacrifice?
Well, in fact, there's been information from time to time linking first the disappearance with a character known as the Americano, then some kind of link between this character and Boston, and the Boston priests that were involved in pedophilia, and then all this linked to satanic reality. Now, for the first time in my book, actually, I show very interesting picture, which is demonstrates that there's been something very strange going on in the Vatican, because this picture shows Father Corrado Balducci, an exorcist, celebrating an exorcism with the head of the Satanist. With a woman lying on the floor. Incredible, no?
Wow.
But at the same time, this guy who is celebrating this ritual is the one from a group called Navona 2000. And Pietro Landi told me that a few days after the disappearance of Emanuela, they got a message, and this message basically said that she had been kidnapped by a satanic group, and this message was coming from within the Navona 2000 group. Now, the Navona 2000 group was a group of esoteric spiritualists, people that followed the spiritism under the guidance of a guy who is also a Satanist. So there has been some links there that are quite. When I started to study this case, and I had the possibility of spending a lot of time with Pietro, asking him some questions, this one was one of the most interesting ones, because he had just disregarded this message like it was nothing. They received hundreds of things, codes, messages, written messages, all kinds of things in the days following the disappearance of Emanuela. So then he didn't really give the right importance to this guy saying, I call from within a group called Navona 2000, and your daughter is in the hands of Satanists. He should have taken immediately that more seriously, but he didn't know what the group Navona 2000 was. He didn't even know if this guy was joking, you understand?
Wow, yeah, no, I understand. This is
So when he actually, finally, he told me this thing, and I said, but you don't know what Navona 2000 is? He was, no. I said, listen, it's a very dangerous group because it's in the hands of a guy called Fulvio Rendel, and Fulvio Rendel is a Satanist. When Marilyn Manson comes to Italy, he puts Fulvio Rendel on the stage.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's pretty amazing.
This is really some creepy stuff. And I investigated this case thanks to a priest I know, an exorcist, who is an ex-guy from the Special Forces of the Carabinieri, who then converted and became a Catholic priest.
Wow.
And I followed this case by sending this Catholic priest in disguise in certain areas and finding information about this priest of Santa Apollinare, who was linked then later to a place where they celebrated satanic masses with this guy who was in Navona 2000 and who was at the time a very known Satanist in Rome, Efrem Del Gatto.
Wow, I didn't know. This is interesting. What I like about you, as I said, I've been reading your books. You mention names, you mention facts that you can just go out and start to, spread out names. They're all somehow verifiable by sources, and that is disturbing, the things I'm listening. Keep going, please.
I hope that people understand the importance of my book, Volume 3, because I describe all this in a very accurate manner. And I also give new information regarding this case. And it's very interesting that now in the last few days, this case is resurfacing in the Italian media. And I hope that this case will be in some way reopened, though they have closed this last year,
Yeah.
So, we are finding ourselves a case that because it lacks any form of evidence, or even the evidence that was given at one point, somebody called on a TV station, Rai 3, on the program Chi l'ha visto, which is a famous Italian TV show.
Yes.
And said, basically, we have the flute of Emanuele Orlandi. And this flute you can find in this place. And actually, they found this flute. Now, the whole thing is then, the whole mystery surrounded this flute. It's very, very, very creepy story when you don't really know how it ends, and then you have to talk with the brother, and the brother still hopes that of course the sister is alive. As a journalist and as a writer, I followed the story very closely because I wanted this book to really bring out some new information, and for that reason I got very much involved with Pietro to really understand how this guy lives, and how he lives also his struggle for his sister. And he was very available. We spent a lot of time together, and he has always been a very, very nice person to me. And I felt very sad for him a lot of times. Yeah, I felt very sad for this person because at one point we understood that if this truth comes out, the Vatican can close down.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do.
But no, the problem is that gives you also a measure of the fact that probably the truth will never come out. Because it's so important for the Vatican to cover up what had happened, which involves high-level members of the Vatican, a satanic orgy which ended up with cocaine, and her probably having a line of this cocaine at a very young age, 15. Your heart is not well formed, you can, simply die. And then there was the testimony that was given by a person from the Banda della Maiana that saw Marcinkus involved in all this. Marcinkus was, of course, also a Freemason, was known to me as a person that, of course, he could have definitely done something like that or be involved in this kind of circles, because he wasn't a pedophile, but he liked young ladies.
Wow. So my point is it possible, Leo, that this organization that, of course, they really believe in worshiping the devil, and they create this sort of pedophile rings, and on top, at the end, they will also do real sacrifices? I believe that that's been happening. We have a lot of testimonials that this is something nothing crazy to talk about it, but it can be really true. They use also these children or these innocents for sex rings to also control politicians or other people that may be influenced in the ring of power structure like media, because that's the way normally you control an organization. You compromise everybody, and then you can control everybody. What do you think?
I think what as an answer to what?
The point is, beside the Vatican, beside the priest ring, beside the high cardinals, is also politicians. Could be Italian politicians,
Italian politicians, I always see them as simply slaves of this system, Jesuit system that is in control. And there is not really much to say about a bunch of politicians that would do anything to stay in power. And when they're not with the Vatican, they know that they don't have a chance to be in power. That's the problem, Wow. So it's all about compromises from the start.
I see.
And the same regards to the mafia. The mafia filters their money through the Vatican bank. So
I see.
It's a situation of corruption that today I think is obvious to everybody, because Italy is going bankrupt because of this corruption, but which is not only corruption. The problem is a lot of people say, Italy is corrupted. Okay, no, this is not about only the Italians being corrupted. This is about the Germans corrupting also the elite of the Italian political system for their own means, and for creating, just a colony that deserves to be punished constantly for having betrayed them during the Second World War. We have to be true about this. It might sound completely far out, but this is the truth. The Germans are now in control of Europe, and they do it in the most undemocratic way possible.
Yes.
And Angela Merkel just went to the Pope the other day in the Vatican, and then came out of this. You could really see even the Pope subject to this control. That the New World Order has some figures that are more prominent than others. Angela Merkel has been on the game for a long time, since the Cold War. She's a skilled tool of the New World Order, of people like George Soros, people like the Rothschilds. People that, of course, have placed also a new French president who is just a puppet of Angela Merkel, who just behaved like a puppet in front of everybody during the G7 in Taormina. So when I show on my book what is happening behind the closed doors of the Vatican, the great crisis in the Knights of Malta, the possibility that there is such a big debt within the Vatican, that it will scare anybody. The Vatican has a huge debt. These, of course, are things that are not revealed every day by the traditional media, because the traditional media is too busy covering up and saying how good is Pope Francis, and even Trump has to be subject to this show with his if he wants to stay where he is.
Yeah, and that's
we
another
saw
thing.
What awkward moments there have been when Trump had to meet with the Pope. It was probably the most awkward moments of his presidency, with this whole scenario, which was completely fake.
Yeah.
And that these people can't stand each other, because, of course, I'm not saying that Trump is not in the New World Order, because unfortunately, if you want to be president of the United States, you are in the New World Order automatically, the moment in which you sit in the White House. So I'm not saying he's not in the New World, but he tries to oppose the liberal-minded view of this New World Order. The worst scam of the New World Order has now really surfaced in this liberal communistic dream, which then will give in to the robot and transhumanism age. You see, the problem for the system of the Illuminati, for the New World Order, is how to eliminate the majority of humans at one point, to substitute them with the machine,
Yes.
The moment in which they can then but also they know that they can colonize with their machines the minds of the people, and they can make them completely imbecile, because imbecility now is in power, the power of the embassies. Now it seems like, you go to a politician like in Italy, Matteo Renzi, or you go to Macron in France, or you go to anybody, Teresa, anybody who is involved in politics, they seems an idiot. And they are idiots because they are embassies, because this is what, they are kind of is surfacing this ignorance, because they're simply puppets. Leo, they don't have anything to say really themselves.
It is true.
They have written...
Yeah, it is true. What you're saying is very true. They be able to manipulate humanity in the last, at least, let's say, couple generations. Like there was a book, I forgot, Brave New World, that through chemicals and also re-education.
Actually, exactly. And this whole mind control manipulation of the masses is described in volume 3, and I actually mentioned these people because I think it's very important to understand that there is an enormous mind control manipulation game being played here at a big level in Jung and Mind Control, which is a chapter of my book, volume 3. I mentioned Julian Huxley, which was the brother, as you know.
Yes.
And of course, there are links to a senior member of the Scottish Rite, which was Winfred Overholser, and basically he was the director of the St. Elizabeth Hospital in Washington, D.C., that usually provided mental health care services to members of the U.S. Armed Forces. Wow. And presided also over the mental health of the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, that after the war became the CIA.
Wow. Let me stop you once. Unfortunately, time went so fast. We're already an hour, almost at the end. I need to do this. I want people out there to understand one thing. This information, in my opinion, is priceless. Because as you said, you could just say, let's play game. They made you an offer. Shut up. We get paid. And we never would have a chance to get this information. It is a small price compared to when people go out to buy stupid coffee at Starbucks. You pay $13 and change, and you can get free shipping. Go to Amazon.com or anywhere else you can find Confessions of an Illuminati in Volume 3, Espionage, Templars and Satanism in the Shadows of the Vatican by Leo Zagami. I appreciate it if you support this author. Leo, I want to thank you again. We had to leave now.
Oh, well, thank you for having me back on your show. I will probably contact you again when my other book comes out next year or in early 2019, which is Invisible Master. I hope to have made sure that you understood at least the concepts that I'm trying to expressing in Volume 3. It's really the last chapter of this trilogy in which we want to instruct the man in the cave to come out and to see that light and to not be afraid anymore of this oppression, because if we are all aware of what's going on, we might be able to free this world.
Perfect. Thank you. Don't go away, guys. Ready for our number 2. You're listening to Love, Guns and Freedom with Luca Zanna.
You're listening to Love, Guns and Freedom with Luca Zanna on United States.fm network.